And I'm really happy that no one else will have to deal with it.
Because how dare you? I told him to go fly a kite. I mean, just at the insult offer.
The next day, nobody talked to me and said that I was trying to ruin this person.
That's how Disney treated its biggest stars, pushing them beyond their limits. From harsh working conditions to shocking betrayals, Marvel's own actors are now pulling back the curtain, revealing how the studio exploited, humiliated, and silenced them. And now, in a move nobody expected, the entire Avengers ensemble is walking away. What they've uncovered could mark the end of the MCU as we know it. This isn't speculation or gossip. This is the moment when everything Disney built over 2 decades is collapsing in real time. The Avengers, the very faces that made the Marvel franchise a household name, have turned their backs, not just on their roles, but on Disney itself. Their message is blunt, raw, and unforgiving. Kiss our Disney goodbye. The empire that minted billions by exploiting their talent is now on the verge of self-destruction. Tonight, you'll see the hard evidence. Court filings, leaked interviews, confessions from stars, and documented mistreatment. These are real stories from actors who reveal how they were underpaid, bullied, or discarded by executives who believed they were untouchable. The biggest shocker, Disney isn't just losing its talent, it's losing its grip on power. The Avengers cast didn't quietly resign behind closed doors. They made their exits public, confrontational, and fearless. They exposed a corrupt corporate system, more interested in profits than people, one that would rather sacrifice its legacy than treat its actors with dignity. And make no mistake, the MCU isn't being rebooted or rebranded, it's being dismantled, shut down. Think about it. From 2008 through 2019, the MCU stood as the most dominant pop culture force in history. From Iron Man's launch to Avengers Endgame's record-breaking box office, Marvel raked in over $22 billion globally. Children dressed as superheroes, adults flocked to theaters. Disney transformed into an unstoppable money-making machine. But then, cracks started forming. Scarlett Johansson was the first star to break rank. She sued Disney, accusing them of breaching her contract on Black Widow by releasing it on streaming without proper compensation. Disney's response wasn't remorse or negotiation, it was retaliation. They attacked her character in the media, implying she was greedy during a global crisis. It was a desperate smear campaign, more suited to a failing company than the world's biggest entertainment powerhouse. The fallout from that lawsuit ignited the spark that became a full-blown revolt. Johansson wasn't just defending herself, she was fighting for every actor silenced by corporate greed. Her victory sent a clear message to every Avenger: you don't have to bow down to the mouse, you don't have to play by their rules anymore. But it didn't stop there. Chris Evans, the face of Captain America, confirmed he's done. Publicly, boldly, he announced he wouldn't return for Avengers Doomsday.
So, Chris Evans is now coming out and saying that he is actually confirming he is not going to be in Avengers Doomsday. Now, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe took a real hit when Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr., Captain America, Steve Rogers, Iron Man, Tony Stark, literally the heart and the soul of the MCU, literally the faces of the MCU. Their characters kind of wrapped up and came.
This wasn't a simple retirement announcement, it was a declaration of independence. A star whose image embodied Disney's patriotic superhero turned and walked away, refusing to be bought with a massive paycheck. It wasn't about winding down a career, it was about rejecting corporate oppression. And when you connect the dots, Johansson's lawsuit, Evans' refusal, Jeremy Renner's public rebuke of insulting pay offers, and countless stars exposing their mistreatment from childhood onwards, a pattern emerges. This isn't coincidence, it's a coordinated exodus. Renner's story stands out as particularly heartbreaking. After surviving a near-fatal snowplow accident, he revealed that Disney offered him half his previous salary to return for season 2 of Hawkeye. Half the money after I almost lost my life.
They asked me to do a season 2, and they offered me half the money. I'm like, wow, it's going to take me twice the amount of work for half the amount of money. And so 8 months of my time, essentially, and to do it for half the amount. I'm like, I'm sorry. And this is not Marvel, mind you. This is like this Disney, not even really Disney. It's just the penny pinchers, the accountants. I don't even think they know who I am. They're just doing the deal, that kind of thing, most likely.
He said, incredulous. I was asked to give 8 months of my time for half the pay. I'm sorry. He walked away with dignity and fury. And it gets worse. Disney's mistreatment of child actors has also been exposed. In a revealing documentary, stars like Jenna Ortega shared stories of abuse, neglect, and being ostracized after speaking out. Instead of protecting vulnerable actors, the company shunned them, branding them as difficult troublemakers.
Reported it privately to our showrunner after the set had wrapped. I found it very disturbing. The person who was touched was obviously disturbed. I talked to the showrunner after set and I said, I do not want my name attached to this because I know how that'll go for.
This wasn't the first time Disney's corporate culture came under fire. Bob Iger, the once celebrated CEO, called actors and writers unrealistic for demanding fair compensation. They have expectations that are not realistic, he stated bluntly on national television, while raking in millions himself. When you hear that from a billionaire making $31 million a year, while cutting pay and slashing budgets, it's no wonder the Avengers walked out. The story shifts from scandal to collapse, because once you lose the Avengers, you lose the heart of the MCU. Once you lose the MCU, you lose the cash cow of modern cinema. And once that golden goose is gone, Disney doesn't just stumble, it crumbles. Today, Disney's MCU expansion plans are dead in the water. Why? They no longer have the trust, the talent, or the credibility to move forward. The Avengers aren't just quitting quietly, they're leading a revolution. The walls of Disney's empire are cracking, and we're just beginning to see the damage. In upcoming sections, we'll reveal how this exodus was orchestrated, the explosive interviews that shocked Hollywood, and the hidden truths about how Disney's toxic environment destroyed its greatest legacy. For now, one fact remains clear: the Avengers saw it coming. They lived it, and when one of them finally spoke out, it opened the floodgate. Stories that executives hoped would remain buried are now breaking into the public eye. From viral clips to convention speeches, painting a single truth: Disney exploited its stars. Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, and dozens more are standing together, shoulder to shoulder with younger actors who've faced similar abuse. It's not just a corporate scandal, it's a full-blown rebellion. And this is only the beginning. And if one day you decided you didn't want to keep suiting up anymore, Disney's contracts didn't care. For most people, stepping back means taking time to breathe, to recalibrate, to decide what's next. For Chris Evans, it meant being chained to a deal that demanded he show up, whether he wanted to or not. 9 films, years of his life, locked in with no escape clause. This wasn't freedom, this wasn't opportunity, it was corporate servitude, dressed up as career gold. When he finally broke out, Evans didn't just hang up the shield, he sent a warning shot to every actor who came after him. Don't let fear box you in. Don't let Disney trap you. Jeremy Renner's story drove the message home even harder. After surviving a horrific accident that nearly ended his life, Renner gained clarity about what mattered most: family, health, the fragility of existence. And yet, when Disney came knocking, they didn't offer gratitude, compassion, or even respect. They dangled an offer so insulting it was almost laughable. Half his previous pay, half the value after nearly dying. As Renner himself put it, was he worth only half, because he'd been run over, because he fought his way back, just to walk and breathe again? That wasn't a contract, that was dehumanization. And instead of quietly accepting it, he told them exactly where to shove it. Publicly. Scarlett Johansson, too, faced the weight of Disney's retaliation. When she sued the company over Black Widow's release strategy, Disney didn't meet her in court with professionalism. They smeared her in the press, framing her as greedy, selfish, even heartless during a global pandemic. But Hollywood saw through the act. Her peers rallied behind her. Fellow stars, even those outside of Marvel, knew this wasn't about a single paycheck. It was about exposing a system that abused its leverage against its own talent. Johansson walked away, not just with a settlement, but with a symbolic win. She proved that even the almighty mouse could bleed. And once that crack appeared, the sharks started circling. If Johansson could challenge Disney and win, maybe others could too. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, the frustrations more public. Actors who had once kept their heads down started speaking up. The illusion of invincibility began to shatter. But the most devastating voices weren't the megastars, they were the kids Disney built its empire on. Child actors, once packaged as wholesome idols for families, began to share their stories. Demi Lovato, Selena Gomez, Miley Cyrus, their careers had been minted in Disney's factory, but behind the catchy songs and laugh tracks was something far darker. The recent documentary pulled back the curtain. Harassment, toxic workplaces, predatory behavior swept under the rug, and worst of all, when a child dared to speak out, they weren't protected. they were punished. One young star admitted that after reporting inappropriate touching, no one spoke to her the next day. Instead, she was accused of trying to ruin someone else's career, a child, silenced to protect the brand. And yet, Disney sells itself as family-friendly, progressive, safe. The hypocrisy is staggering, which is why when the Avengers, now adults with power and influence, stood up, they weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every kid who had been ignored, dismissed, or branded as difficult for daring to tell the truth. Even Disney's leadership couldn't hide its contempt. CEO Bob Iger, during the height of the strikes, dismissed actors and writers as unrealistic, entitled, disruptive. His tone was dripping with disdain. But while he accused creatives of being out of touch, he personally pocketed tens of millions in a single year. To him, unrealistic meant daring to ask for a fair share, while executives dined on fortunes. The Avengers weren't playing that game anymore. Behind closed doors, Disney tried everything: outrageous offers, cameo promises, multiverse tricks. They dangled creative freedom like bait, desperate to pull stars back into the fold. But the answer kept coming back the same. No, Evans made it clear he wasn't touching Avengers Doomsday. Johansson distanced herself entirely. Renner slammed the door after the half-pay humiliation. Even Robert Downey Jr., once the heart of Marvel, swerved into a completely different role, rumored to take on Doctor Doom, a move that underlined just how absurd Disney's desperation had become. This wasn't just actors walking away, it was actors rejecting Disney's entire identity. And audiences noticed. Numbers don't lie. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania underperformed. The Marvels bombed. Disney Plus shows were axed mid-run. The machine wasn't unstoppable anymore. It was sputtering, and the truth became impossible to deny. Marvel had never been built on CGI or corporate synergy alone. It thrived because of the passion, charisma, and sacrifice of its actors. They carried the brand on their shoulders, aged a decade under grueling contracts, gave everything to bring these heroes to life. When they left, the magic left with them. By 2025, Disney had no choice but to face the music. Without announcements or press tours, they began cutting projects, slashing budgets, and quietly dismantling creative teams. The MCU, once the crown jewel of modern cinema, was over. And the final nail in the coffin? The Avengers cast themselves, standing together, rejecting Disney as one. Not quietly, not individually, collectively. A coordinated act of defiance. Their message was clear: we're done. Disney, of course, tried to spin it differently. They claimed it was about creative directions, that stars were simply moving on. But leaked interviews and private conversations told another story entirely. This wasn't actors drifting apart, it was actors uniting in rebellion. Scarlett Johansson struck the first blow. Chris Evans was the first exit. Jeremy Renner was the first outright rejection. Together, they lit a fuse, and suddenly, every Avenger was comparing stories, unfair contracts, manipulative execs, gaslighting tactics. They realized the truth. If they stayed, they'd burn out. They'd lose their careers. They'd lose themselves. So they did the unthinkable. They assembled one last time. Not against Thanos, but against Disney. And when Captain America closes the door, the entire house comes down. The child stars had warned us years earlier. The toxic culture was never new. It was systemic. What was framed as opportunity had always been exploitation dressed in glitter. And now, the world was watching. As the Avengers said enough. Disney thought they could silence Scarlett with a payout, thought they could bait Evans with money, thought they could guilt Renner into limping back. Instead, they sparked a public rebellion that turned fans against them. Suddenly, Disney wasn't the dream factory, it was the villain of its own story. And the public knew it. In Hollywood, image is everything. That's why in 2025, Disney did what no one thought possible. They pulled the plug. No more Avengers, no more MCU expansions, no more billion-dollar crossovers. Why? Because they had nothing left. No cast, no trust, and no leverage. The Avengers didn't just walk away, they dismantled the entire foundation of Disney's most lucrative franchise. And just how bad was it? Catastrophic. For years, Disney's entire business model was built around Marvel. These weren't just films, they were marketing engines, powering merchandise, theme parks, streaming services, and more. When Avengers Endgame grossed over $2.7 billion worldwide, it wasn't just a box office win, it fueled every corner of the corporation. But once the Avengers were gone, the fallout was immediate. Theme park attendance plummeted, toy sales cratered, Disney Plus lost subscribers. Stock prices nosedived. This wasn't a film franchise collapsing. It was a corporate empire disintegrating. Here's the truth. Disney would never admit. It wasn't superhero fatigue that brought them down. It wasn't fans losing interest. It wasn't market shifts or bad scripts. It was Disney's own hubris. Their greed, their callousness, and their exploitation of the very stars that made them billions. They stretched their actors thin, ignored their hardships, and expected loyalty in return. Instead, they got Hollywood's most coordinated rebellion ever seen. The Avengers didn't just walk away in silence. They united, not on camera, but in real life. Their message to Disney was sharp, unfiltered, unforgettable. Kiss our ass. The empire had destroyed itself from within. Lies, corporate betrayal, and unchecked ambition tore it apart. But this wasn't a spontaneous meltdown. It was a meticulously planned revolt. Disney had always believed it controlled its stars, with 9 picture deals, strict non-disclosure agreements, carefully orchestrated media appearances, but all that control fell apart the moment the Avengers started communicating. It began quietly. Scarlett Johansson, exhausted from fighting for her rights after Disney cut her Black Widow deal, reached out to trusted colleagues, not to vent, not to gossip, but to warn them. She'd seen firsthand how the studio manipulated contracts, twisted distribution plans, and weaponized the press against actors who spoke out. She didn't want anyone else to suffer the same way. I'm really glad no one else has to go through what I went through, she told friends. It wasn't a boast. It was a rallying cry. I fought them so you wouldn't have to. Chris Evans picked up the baton next. Publicly, he seemed regretful when he announced he wouldn't return for Avengers Doomsday. But behind the scenes, he was connecting with co-stars, venting frustrations, comparing deals, and signaling that he was done playing Disney's game. It's no coincidence that the MCU took a massive hit when Evans and Robert Downey Jr., the faces of Captain America and Iron Man, stepped away. Their departures weren't accidents. They were calculated moves. If Evans, the face of America's superhero, walked out, the entire franchise would implode. Jeremy Renner's near-fatal accident added fuel to the fire. He saw how Disney treated him like a commodity, offering half his previous pay with a dismissive attitude that implied gratitude for being hired at all. His rejection wasn't about the money. It was a warning shot to every actor. If they insult Hawkeye, they'll insult you next. And it worked. The Avengers' coordination wasn't just private venting. Their moves were carefully timed and publicized in ways Disney couldn't anticipate or control. Johansson's lawsuit, Evans's announcements, Renner's podcast interviews, each domino fell one after the other, like clockwork. The Avengers weren't just assembling on screen. They were orchestrating a real-world takeover against Disney's exploitation. Once the actors stood together, fans followed. Social media erupted. Hashtags like Dying Pay ScarJo and Stand with Renner flooded platforms globally. Audiences once lining up for premieres now turned on the studio, booing its decisions, and calling for accountability. The narrative flipped overnight. Disney was no longer the dream factory. It was the villain. But the most shocking betrayal came from Disney itself. As the actors plotted their departure, Disney launched its own desperate attempts to keep control. Rumors leaked that the company was experimenting with AI-generated cameos, recycling actors' likenesses without permission, and using body scans to digitally resurrect characters. Even CEO Bob Iger hinted at it, suggesting AI could be the solution to actor strikes. It will have a very damaging effect on the industry, he said, with collateral damage to those who support services. In plain terms, if actors refuse to comply, they'll be replaced with code. For the Avengers, that was the breaking point. They realized this wasn't just about money or creative differences. It was about survival of their craft, their dignity, their very existence. Disney's plan to erase human actors with CGI was the ultimate betrayal. Scans of faces and bodies without consent. Background performers coerced into booths for reference data. It was all a blueprint for erasing human creativity and replacing it with digital doubles. Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, and others recognized the danger immediately. Why pay living, demanding actors when a perfect CGI replica costs less and obeys all commands? Fans saw it too. Once reports about Disney's AI schemes leaked, outrage exploded. Hashtags like "Dying Not My Avengers" and Disney Exposed trended across platforms. YouTube creators dissected the corporate malfeasance. Memes mocked soulless CGI heroes. The studio's reputation plummeted. And the Avengers didn't even need to explain. A few cryptic remarks, a knowing smirk in an interview. Fans connected the dots. Disney had betrayed them, and they no longer trusted the brand. Iger tried to control the damage. He spun AI as merely a tool, not a replacement, but his words betrayed his intentions. We negotiated a very good deal with the Directors Guild that reflects their value, he claimed. We want to do the same with the actors. Notice how he framed it. Good for business, not good for artists. That's the heart of the problem. The Avengers Rebellion wasn't just about salaries. It was about being seen and valued as people. Johansson didn't sue for money alone. Renner didn't walk for pride alone. Evans didn't quit from burnout alone. They recognized the same truth. Disney no longer saw them as humans with talent and soul, but as obstacles in the way of profit. And that realization sparked a mutiny that would change Hollywood forever. But here's what truly shocked Disney. The Avengers didn't lash out chaotically. Their rebellion was precise, strategic, and surgical. One actor at a time delivered the final blow. A lawsuit here, an interview there, a rejection on a podcast. No overlap, no interference. Each move calculated to avoid direct confrontation while ensuring maximum impact. They didn't stumble, they executed. And the result? The Avengers didn't just walk away. They dismantled Disney's empire piece by piece.